Arr! What's up, everybody? We be the crew of the C3 films, and this be our show and open discussion. My name be the first mate. I be Chris, and my captain, she be.
Cheryl. Captain Cheryl.
That be right, young hearties. So today we are gonna get into one of the best movies that we've ever seen on all the seven seas. Yeah, Brady Billy Deckers. I don't know what we're saying, but the point is that this movie, Pirates of the Caribbean, Curse of the Black Pearl, is one of the best pirates movies ever to grace the seven seas. Avast to me hearties, ya sabe? Anyway, I can only do that for so long. So, welcome. I hope you guys enjoy. We're going to talk about Pirates of the Caribbean, Curse of the Black Pearl. Spoiler alert, we're going into this movie. If you haven't seen this movie, what's wrong with you? Why haven't you seen it? It's an absolutely amazing movie. Great music, great cast. Awesome. One of Cheryl's favorite movies. So, without further ado, let's go ahead and jump right into it. This movie, Cheryl, had acting. Let us know.
Right. If you didn't notice, I am a fan. A really big fan. Um, so, one of the reasons why I like this film so much is because I am a big Disney fan and I've been on the ride many, many a time. And so it was just really exciting to see the movie birth from the ride itself. So,
Yeah.
being 13 when it first came out, it was just very exciting, and they definitely did not let you down. Like, even as an adult watching it back, like, it's just so fun, and I could watch it over and over and over again and still have the same amount of fun every time. Like, the dialogue is great, the writing itself is just really good, and like the set pieces. This was kind of like, it's 2003, so it was still like before CGI was like really, really, really big, like used on like for everything. Now they use it for like everything, but 2003 they were still using practical sets, practical effects, and stuff like that. And so it's one of those movies in that sweet spot of having just the right amount of CGI and just the right amount of practical effects where it just all melds together really well. Um,
Yeah. I never rode the ride. So, and when I was a kid and seeing this movie, I had no idea. This movie came out of nowhere for me. But the fun of the movie is in all of the characters. I mean, it's just such a fun movie. When the movie starts and you see Captain Jack Sparrow, it's like it encapsulates so many good moments, and you get like the idea of who these characters are like within a couple of seconds of meeting them. When you first meet Jack, he's riding in on a ship, like he's high on the top of the sail, looking out at the port, and then you see him have to go down and literally scoop water out of the ship. And then when he comes in, he literally comes in on a sinking ship. But even though it's sinking, he's still smooth. He pulls up, walks right onto the port, and then just and keeps it going. His ship sinking behind him. You know exactly who this character is. Somebody that is kind of rough around the edges and things don't necessarily go well for him, but he still somehow holds his composure and is able to still step onto dry land even though he was in a ship that was sinking. Like he gets off before it actually hits the water. Like
yeah,
it's beautiful. It's great.
and he commits. I think that's one of the great things about his character is that he commits to whatever is happening, and that's like a really great example where like things are definitely not going his way, but he's just going with it. Like, I meant to do that, and he doesn't say it. He just, you know, permeates that I meant to do that, and it's just built into his character. And just like his character in general is just really complex and funny and original. And I know a lot of
Mm-hmm.
people say, like, they're tired of Johnny Depp doing the same character and over and over, and a lot of people don't like Jack Sparrow, but that's okay. It's he's definitely not for everyone, but all I can say is there's a lot of good things about his character, particularly in the first three movies, that like you can't really top that.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. And we did a little talk about on Stranger Tides, and we talked about why Jack Sparrow doesn't. We don't feel he works by himself. But one of the things that lets him work in this movie are the people that he gets to play off of, and that's the two characters, Elizabeth and Will. And Orlando Bloom and Keira Knightley are also just great in this movie, and they capture their characters amazingly. And whenever they get to interact with Johnny Depp playing Jack Sparrow, it's always fun, and there's always interesting interactions, even like basic conversations. One of the conversation I really liked was when they are on the ship after they escape, and which is also just funny in itself how Jack Sparrow gets seen by all these people as being like this terrible pirate, but then he's constantly outsmarting people, and he literally gets them to come and give him a ship that he can actually man with two people and sails away on it, and then makes it so that they can't even chase him down or shoot at him. It's like, yeah, I guess he is the best pirate I've ever seen. Go figure.
So it
But
would seem.
so it would seem. He had to chew on that. You could feel the hatred. He was so salty. But yeah, but then like the scene that follows that where they're on the ship and Will's like, "Hey, you know my dad. I could tell. I'm not a simpleton." And Jack is being really chill about like talking to him about his dad, and his Will is actually kind of being a jerk in this scene where he's like, "I refuse to believe my dad was a pirate," and pulls a sword on Jack. And Jack's still keeping his cool, knocks this dude overboard and is like hanging for his life so he doesn't fall into the water. And Jack tells him straight up, "Hey, you can either accept that this was the way it is and like move on, or blah blah. I can like let you drown," and blah, or whatever it is that he says. But the interaction between him and Will are great, especially because Will is the outsider like us coming into this magical pirate world. He doesn't know about the compass. He doesn't know about all these other things that are going on, but Jack does. And he's getting exposed to it. We as the audience are getting exposed to it too through Will Turner. And then we get to see how Jack influences Will, and then how that later he's able to influence, and even how Elizabeth is able to be influenced by Barbosa too. So it was just, and Jeffrey Rush. Anyway, so many characters, great actors. Like I'll give it back to you.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. The cast is just really well put together. I also loved Jeffrey Rush. He was such a great villain, such a great pirate. Gotta love his pirate laugh, and his pirate lingo. Like, just he just really played the character of Hector Barbosa very, very well.
I'm
And
disinclined to acquiesce to your request.
right.
It means no.
That's pretty good. We should get you his hat, and then we could be pirate hat
Right?
buddies. I'll get you a really big hat.
Yeah.
um,
So good.
but yeah, I mean, there's just so many things I love about this movie. From like the music. Gosh, I love the music. The first movie, I actually didn't like the music as much.
Really?
Yeah, like I mean the theme, like the OG pirate theme, which carries on, in every pirate movie. That one's really great. I love it. It's adventurous, swashbuckling. It's amazing. And I think what a lot of people might not realize is the first movie was composed by Klaus Badell. I think that's how you pronounce his name. But it was
Yeah, it
produced
wasn't
by
Hans Zimmer.
Hans Zimmer.
Yeah.
So they actually, I guess, in a sense, worked on it together. And it's interesting because Hans Zimmer does the second, third movie, and like so on, so on. I don't think he really did the other ones, but well, we don't have to talk about that right here
Yeah. Yeah.
for lack of time. But it's interesting to really hear the difference. If you have an ear for music score, you could really tell the difference between the styles in the first one versus the second and third one. So I actually love the music for the second and third one way more than the first one. But I think that it's a little bit to do with just the fact that it's a little bit easier to listen to, because the themes for the villains in the first movie are very like shrill. There's lots of like high pitched, like it just gives me anxiety.
It's interesting because one of my favorite scenes in the movie. So I remember loving it a lot as a kid, and maybe I didn't like it as much as an adult, but it still works for me. And it's that reveal of the supernatural and the skeletons on the ship when Elizabeth first comes out after trying to stab and kill Barbosa, and he's looking at her like, "Well, what are you gonna do after you plan on killing me?" And then she goes out in the moonlight, and then you just see all the skeletons, and the music is playing, and then the camera's moving, and you see them like sweeping the deck and everything, and like rhythm. I love that moment. Like that was the moment when I saw the movie, and I was like, "Oh, this movie is something special. This is cool." And then it's topped off with that moment that you just told us on stream is from the ride where he comes out and he says, "You best start believing in ghost stories, Miss Turner. You're in one." And then just drinks and then it's coming out of him and she just like, oh, runs away. Great scene. Amazing scene. Encapsulates so much of the movie. And then the movie is just it's more just cool and great moments. But I absolutely love that moment. And the music in that moment works for me. Because it just feels like it goes with the scene and it gets me involved, and it almost feels like they're about to start doing like a Disney singing song because she falls in there and they like hoist her up in the air. You can almost hear them like singing a tune or whatever. But yeah, but obviously they don't actually sing. But yeah, it felt really good to me.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think the music really worked during the movie, but it's not like a score that I would enjoy listening to like
Right,
every
on your
day.
free time, just without
Yeah,
the movie.
I
Yeah.
think it's like a mix because there's some pieces of music that I feel really tell a story, like when the whole piece for when Jack is first introduced. It's called "He's a Pirate." Actually, that's the name of the song. And with it starts with like really grand because you can only see him and he's sailing, but then it becomes a little bit more mischievous when he has to jump down and bail the water out. And then there's the sad, solemn music when he salutes the pirates that were hung. And then, like, it just tells a story. And I really love that kind of music because
Yeah.
it's something that, like, I can remember and, like, go along with and everything. Um, but definitely not as like I don't know. I think it was just really for me. It was just a theme for the bad pirates that it was just a little too much for me. But it's probably because I listened to the score outside of the movie, and when you're
Right.
listening to it by itself, it's not as fun. It's not
It
fun
doesn't. Yeah.
because they're bad guys.
Right. You want to like the best scores work by themselves and enhance the visuals, but they don't necessarily only work with the visuals. And I get the feeling that you're saying that for you, at least, this score only works with the visuals. It doesn't work by itself.
Yeah, exactly. Quite well put.
Okay. Yeah. No, I can understand that. Um, Another cool thing that I thought was in this movie, another cool moment, was when Elizabeth first gets kidnapped, and then that the parlay joke that gets carried throughout the movie. But when she gets to start talking to Barbosa, and they ask for her name, and in the moment you understand why she's lying because she's thinking, "I'm the governor's daughter. If I say my name, they're going to understand that I'm the governor's daughter, and they're going to use that to ransom me and get money." So she chooses Turner's like Will Turner. She chooses William's last name because she likes him, and because she likes him, it's the first last name she could think of. But then her doing that actually hurts her more because now they think that she's the kid of the guy that they killed that they need for blood, and she had the medallion, so it all works out. So she doesn't know that she kind of just screwed herself over worse, but they're all like, "Oh wow, we just got lucky." And I just thought that was a really cool. It's a small little thing in story, but I thought that was really interesting that she chose a name that she thought was safe because she knew her name would get her in trouble, but the name she chose actually was worse for her.
There's definitely a lot of little twists and turns and stuff like that throughout this movie. And it, I guess it kind of gets a little tricky, but if you watch it as many times as I do, you start to notice the little things like the whole thing with Elizabeth using Will's last name. Um, I I think that part of why this movie is so great is because it has quite a lot of payoffs.
Yes,
A lot of the
true.
payoffs I think are verbal payoffs, like parlay and gosh, I can't think of another one off the top of my head. Look at my notes.
It's
But
okay.
speaking of parlay,
Oh my gosh, you were sitting on that the entire stream. You were waiting
I
to
may
show
have
that
a
off.
copy of parlay.
What
It's the
is
pirate's
that?
code.
Oh, you mean Pirates Guidelines?
Yeah, it's
By the
it's
way,
basically.
that was another verbal payoff. By the way, the
Oh
guidelines
yeah,
is more
they're more
guidelines.
like guidelines anyway. Yeah. So I haven't copy that. Just yeah, I was
Why
sitting
is
on
it
that.
so long? It looks like like the Ten Commandments or
There's
something.
a lot of rules.
And you're telling me that all the pirates that are in this world memorize these rules? At least the captains, I guess.
Supposedly.
Gosh, dang, that's crazy. That's cool though. I'm not even surprised you have that. I'm surprised you don't have that framed.
Well, I never opened it. I opened it specifically for this. Yeah.
Wow.
So I once went to the festival or a pirate festival, and there were freaking ninjas there, and I was like, when I saw them there, I was like, they need to leave.
You don't belong here.
You guys need to go.
Wow.
But anyway, back to the movie.
Yes.
But yeah, there were lots of payoffs. Another good one was when Will throws the sword and it gets stuck, and so he uses that again at the very end of the movie when he saves Jack. So like there's just a lot of like little things that payoffs. That's what payoffs are. And it just feels so good like at the end of the movie to have everything all wrapped up and to see all these things come back and repeated.
Yeah, and so the funny thing is that they leave themselves open for so I think it's somewhat like the Matrix, where I feel like the movie was made with the idea of being a single film in mind, but they leave it open a little bit so that they could do a sequel. And in the case of the Matrix, it's obviously like the whole thing of like seeing how the War of the Machines turn out, which is appropriate since we're talking about two of our favorite film franchises. Um, but with Pirates, it's kind of open with like the history of his father, and they talk about like, oh, who your father was, Bootstrap Bill. We sent him to Davy Jones' locker, and then it's like, wait, that's the what the whole next movie is about, and saving his father from being a part of Davy Jones' crew. Like,
Another small piece to that is that they mentioned the East Indian Trading Company, which also comes up. That was another trivia thing that I had.
oh right, yeah, when they first reach Jack and they grab his hands.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, no, and so like there's moments that can come up, but you can watch the first Pirates movie the same way you can watch the first Matrix movie by itself. And if you don't know that there's a trilogy, you don't feel like there's more that you need to see. But similarly, the sequels of these two franchises both feel like one continuous movie as opposed to two individual standalone films.
Mm-hmm.
Like Dead Man's Chest and At World's End need to be watched together. The movies literally the second movie literally hangs on a cliffhanger, the
Mm-hmm.
same way that the Matrix Reloaded does. And so you have to watch Matrix Revolution. So it's interesting because it's like they realized that they wanted to tell more of the story, and so for the next two films, they decided to make a story that can be tacked on to the first movies, but these stories exist for these two specific films. So I just thought that that's kind of interesting how that like franchise played out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I'm not even sure if they did it on purpose. But because it's hard to imagine that they did do it on purpose because of how intricate it is.
Yeah.
The second and third movie, but also because of how they conceived this movie from a really old ride that doesn't really have a story. Like it, the ride has a story, but it's a very simple story of just the fact that like pirates go to this town, they plunder and pillage, and that's it. That's basically the story of the ride. And it's so interesting how they take all these different elements of the ride, and I'm not going to go into detail about all the elements that they took from the ride, but a lot of it is actually in the movie. And seeing it from actually knowing the ride and seeing all those elements is one of the most exciting things for me, at least as a kid, having watched it for the first time. So for me, I'm not sure if they actually thought about the second and third movie, but more of like how they were like, oh, okay, well, the first one really worked out well. Let's do a second and third one and look at the first one again and see what kind of elements we can pull out of that and twist into another movie. So,
Right.
but I mean, just the whole first, second, and third movie, like they were really good. They were not perfect, but they were really good. They were really fun. Um, can't talk enough about how much I love the music. It's one of my favorite scores ever. It's probably one
It's
like
really good.
yeah, it's probably one of the biggest reasons why I love the Pirate series so much is because the music is so memorable. Can't tell you how big of a fan I am. I actually went to see Hans Zimmer in concert, and there was 10 minutes of pure pirates, and I was like, it was the most beautiful thing I'd ever sat through in my life to see Hans Zimmer play that.
Yeah, see, that's one of those things. Like if you've been checking out like our videos, you know that we bring up score a lot in film. A lot more than I hear most other people that talk about films bring it up, and it's probably because we both have a very strong love for sound design and music, and it means a lot for us. And in this case, it means a lot for you, and that's why like it literally helps to elevate the movie past just being like a small popcorn flick to you to being on another level and just with the music.
Mm-hmm. All I can say, and this is what I learned in film school, sound is 50% of the movie. You can forgive bad acting, but you cannot forgive bad sound.
Fair enough. Fair enough. But yeah, and like the way this movie begins, also it begins on a very intriguing note. A ship in like a dense fog and a little girl humming a very creepy pirate tune. And then this whole idea of the superstitions behind pirates and they're kind of formulated as being these kind of mythical beings that are dangerous. And then they come across a ship that's burning and a lone boy who's like sitting on like knocked unconscious on a raft with a pirate pendant on his neck. Like, what is this? And then yeah, that moment when she falls off. Even and that's another reason. This is another thing that's just kind of on my mind, like how things are tied together. You know, they have her wear a corset, and you might think, oh, okay, she's wearing a corset. It doesn't matter. This is the time that women wore corsets, whatever. But it's used as a way to develop the plot because since she's wearing a corset, she literally runs out of breath and faints and falls from the top of this building to the water. And the whole point of that is that so when that coin hits the water, it activates and it calls out to Barbossa and the crew of the Black Pearl, which can then get the whole point of the movie started. So literally something as benign as her putting on a corset is the reason and the catalyst or the inciting incident for what will lead to the rest of the movie even being able to take place at all. So
It
it's
just
just yeah.
sorry, I was just
You
gonna
gonna say?
say it reminded me of the end when she's like, "You like pain? Try wearing a corset."
Right? Another little payoff,
Yep.
by the way. Another little like verbal payoff. Um, and so yeah, so I found myself very intrigued with what this world was when we come in and we see and we kind of learn right off the bat that it's kind of a magical world, right? So it's not just pirates. And that's one of the things I think that also serve to elevate it. They lean more into it in the second and third film, more so than this one, but the implication that this is a magical pirate world now makes it seem like way more interesting than just being a normal, like run of the mill, regular pirate world based on our own reality.
That's true. It really does like put the movie or the world, like just yeah, I guess the movie to another level because it has
Mhm.
that extra layer of fantasy in it where, it's not I guess like just pirates are kind of boring, but when you have this
Yeah.
kind of pirates, it's more fun, it's more exciting, it's more new and fresh and edgy because it has like magic in it. And I think that's one of the things that was kind of lacking in the fourth one too. Is
Right.
is that magical element, and why the first one had just the right amount because it was just enough for it to still feel like we're in a regular world because it's just a curse, right? And the
Right.
second and third one, they really go wild with it, like you said.
Yeah, they go so
They
wild.
go really
Um,
into the sailor's lore of Davy Jones in that one.
right? I mean, and then you're just seeing it on full display throughout that entire movie, especially in that World's End, because now we're getting into like what Khaleesi or Calypso and like I said Khaleesi. Oh my god.
Wrong series.
Calypso and like the spells and all this other information. Like they build a lot of lore to the point where I was almost wondering if they were going to go into like prequels at some point. Because there's so much information they
They
just like
probably could.
yeah, no, they definitely built like a really cool world, and it all started from this ride that basically had like a page of like notes on what a story is. So like, yeah, it's really cool. And then also just to cap off on that whole Elizabeth falling in the water moment, it also serves as a way to get Jack directly involved with what's happening because he leaps into the water to save her. So this benign moment that you think might only be for Jack is actually constructed around all these other story and like ideas that come into play to push the story forward, but they don't seem like that's their purpose. Or it might seem like it serves only one purpose, but there are multiple things that are serving this purpose. So,
Mm-hmm.
just from a story perspective, that's another thing that works really well in this movie.
I think another thing that really works well is the choreography. There's a lot of choreography, and it's so interesting. And the reason why it's so interesting is because they use the set. They really use the area and the props and just things that are around them as part of the movie. And I think like not enough movies do that. Like there's a lot of action movies, there's a lot of fighting in movies and stuff, but it's very rare where they would actually use the sets so intricately with their fight scenes. So,
Right.
like, just one of the best examples is the first time Jack and Will meet. One of my favorite scenes, one of my favorite scores. I actually did that scene in my directing class and I reenacted the whole thing.
How did you do the balancing on
And
the?
I didn't get to do it that intricately, but I'll tell you more about it later.
Okay. Wow, I am impressed.
But yeah, it was just that is one of my favorite scenes. One of my favorite scores for that scene. Like just everything about it was probably just one of the best scenes out of the whole series ever. Is that one scene? There's so much
Well,
to
I,
it.
I would say that you are right that because they loved that scene so much that they had to recycle that scene specifically when they were balancing on the and fighting. They had to recycle a scene like that in the next two films.
And in Stranger Tides, when he fights with Penelope Cruz, yeah, they did. They recycled it so terribly. I think the second and third movie had more original fight scenes than the fourth one. But yeah.
Wow. Yeah. So I mean, at the end of the day, the movie is just a lot of fun. It's very well put together. It's very well acted, and it's the start of something good. It's the start of a really good franchise. And I had a lot of fun going back and watching it. I was not physically in pain when I watched this movie, so that was a plus. I got to really enjoy it, and I found myself the. I think the other thing was to talk about like how funny the movie can be, because we didn't really touch on it too much, but we talked about how the movie can be fun, but the movie can also be genuinely funny, and it can surprise you where it's going to be funny, and it's the humor is not done in a way that like a lot of Marvel movies kind of force their humor now. it's done in a way where it feels organic to the characters and to the scene, and that's why it's effective. So I when I think about On Stranger Tides, I remember laughing in the beginning of the movie, but then I realized that the movie wasn't as funny as we kept going through it. But this movie, while it's not can't be anywhere near classified as a comedy, has comedy in it that absolutely works, and fight scenes that could be kind of considered slapstick, but it doesn't really feel ridiculous. It feels like it works within the context of the world they're creating.
That's right. They always talk while they're fighting.
Yeah.
The talk is, they're not just talking, they're bantering, which, like, they're not just fighting physically, they're fighting with their words too, but they're doing it in like a fun way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And one of the one of the best moments, like this goes back to that scene where Jack and Will are talking on the boat about his father. One of the best moments that tells the difference between those two characters is in this like small little bit of dialogue where Will literally says, "If we were fighting fair, I would kill you." And then Jack says, "That doesn't give me much incentive to fight fair now, does it?" And that's the difference in both their characters right there. Will believes in fighting fair and being honorable. Jack believes in winning.
Mm-hmm. Like common sense, like do what makes, like, what will benefit you, I guess, is a good way to put
Yeah,
it.
absolutely.
So
So,
one of my favorite parts of the movie, or like the funniest moments in the movie for me, was when Jack just waltzed back into the cave, like right after they had marooned him on the island a second time, and Barbosa is like, how is this?
it hasn't even been a day.
How are you back here? And then one of my favorite lines, also around that same area of the movie, is this is my all time favorite line, and it's from Jack Sparrow, and he says, "Me, I'm dishonest, and you can always trust a dishonest man to be dishonest. Honestly, it's the honest ones that you ought to look out for, because you never know when they're gonna do something stupid."
Yeah.
And I had to like listen to that line like a couple times, because I was like, huh? But then when you like really, really like look at it, you're like, oh wow, that is some clever writing right there. And that's like how Jack Sparrow talks. And I think that's like why he's such a cool character, is because like he talks like that. And everyone's usually like, what? When he says something, because he says it so like backwards, kind of
Weird.
like
Yeah.
Yoda, but like in a more confusing way.
Right. But it encapsulates who he is, and
Yeah,
that's what makes it fun. And then you have someone like Will or Elizabeth that are looking at him just like, "You're an idiot," or "Whose side are you on?" And
right.
yeah, it's the last thing I want to say about it is that we mentioned it in our other talk about Stranger Tides, which if you haven't seen, go check it out. There'll be a link in the description of this video. But um, the fact that the three play off of each other, and that dynamic is what carries the entire trilogy. I think that if Will was by himself, he'd be boring. If Jack is by himself, he's not as interesting. And as Elizabeth is by herself, maybe she could be interesting, but I don't think she could be as interesting. So what it really comes down to is that it is a great movie that found a way to uphold three main characters, put them in situations where they have to interact with each other, and because of their interactions with each other, they each influence each other and cause each other to change, whether it be for in a positive way or a negative way. They at least cause each other to change, and that is one of like the best things that I feel like I love from this original trilogy, but specifically for Curse of the Black Pearl.
And it's a lot of clever writing, more so in the second and third one. But in the first one, it's definitely there where everyone has their own motivations to act upon, which is
Mm-hmm.
also really great, because it's movies are really good when characters have motivation to do things, to act upon. And there's a lot of that in this movie. And the other great thing about it is how the three different main characters each have their own specific motivation for what they do, and they all just kind of meet at one point, like,
Mm.
and it all comes together in their favor, in all three of their favors. So, despite having different views
Yeah, absolutely.
and
So,
conflicting each other along the way.
yep. And that's how you build an interesting like trilogy of characters. Like it's phenomenal. And one thing I want to think about going forward is did they do something in these movies where they shift focus on like who the movie was about? Like is is the Curse of the Black Pearl like mainly about Jack, while Dead Man's Chest being about Elizabeth and At World's End being about Will? Like I wonder, like, and so I'm going to think about that when we go back and watch those other movies.
And I'm going to watch them again.
So
And again and
yeah, but
again.
we're gonna get ready to wrap up here. Is there anything else you wanted to say? Any final thoughts about the film that you didn't get to
Um,
get off your chest? It's one of your favorites, so I'm sure there's a lot you could say.
no, I think, I mean, I guess another thing I kind of want to point out is how cool it was when, that last scene when they're fighting in the moonlight and they're going in and out between being skeletons and not skeletons, and seeing Jack Sparrow as a skeleton for the first time, like all that was really cool. Just
Yes,
so
the
good.
cherry on top. It's like you get to see them in the moonlight, under the moonlight, but then when you get to see them moving back and forth in between it, it just makes an already cool like fight choreography even cooler. And then a great ending at the end where you see Jack cut his wrist or cut his like palm with the thing, throw it at Will, who he knows is about to do it, and then immediately shoots Barbosa right before Barbosa is about to shoot Elizabeth, and then it's just like, oh wow, you're alive, but now you're dead. Which, by the way, you're gonna have to tell me how Barbosa comes back, because for the life of me, I cannot remember how this guy comes back from the dead.
I can explain it.
So we'll talk about that later. Um, but yeah, so we're gonna go ahead and call it there. But what did you guys think about the Curse of the Black Pearl? Did you see it? It's an old movie. If you haven't seen it, go and watch it. It is one of Cheryl's favorite movies, as you can see here. But whatever you thought about it, comment below. Let us know. And while you're down there, if you give it a like, share, and subscribe. And until the next time, I have been the first mate of C3 Films, and this is be my captain here.
R.I.B. Captain Cheryl, and thanks for being here. See you next time.